Oh, thanks very much, Brett. And Becky, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all and to talk a little bit about subjects that are near and dear to my heart. So, our topic for today is cornerstones of health. And the four that I selected are managing stress, exercise, nutrition, and sleep. Um, I am a registered nurse, as Brett said. I've been retired for 3 years. I spent about 30 years of my nursing practice at Eisenhower, and over the years worked from post-op hearts to hospice and palliative care. I ended my tenure at Eisenhower working in cardiac pulmonary rehab and our heart failure clinic at the Rinker Wellness Center, and had also spent about a little over a decade as the leader for professional development and staff development in nursing. These are topics that are personal to me. They've helped me over the years, and anytime I have the opportunity to share them with others, number one, I get to learn things, so I'm hoping that this can be a casual presentation. And number two, they've brought great benefit to my life, and in some respects, I guess I'd hope that I could pay it forward just a little. So the objectives for our time together is to identify the four cornerstones of health. We sort of did that, but they're all interconnected. And I want to be able to bring some discussion to that and then provide you some resources if you'd like to do some further follow-up after our time together. It's always helpful for me. You all have given some of your time to attend this. And if you've got something that you want to be sure we either talk about or is a burning issue for you, if you'll put it in the chat, then Becky can let me know, and I will try to be sure that I answer that when we do the wrap up at the end. So you will feel that your time, your valuable time was respected. So the four cornerstones of health, acronyms help me. So MENS was what this came together as: managing stress, exercise, nutrition, and sleep. I've done a number of discussions and forums with Eisenhower on stress management. So I hadn't planned to spend as much time on that, though if it's somebody's burning issue, pop it into the chat and I can definitely spend more time there. It really is sort of the umbrella for all of it, because managing stress is really critical to our health and well-being. And three of the most basic tools that we can use for that purpose is exercise, nutrition, and quality sleep. So stress has lots of definitions. The one that I use the most is the simplest one, and that is comes from occupational health literature by White, and stress is the perceived need for change. So stress isn't necessarily bad. Stress can be for wonderful things. Someone's getting married, there's a graduation, a new baby. That's wonderful, but it requires the need for change. And as a result, it's stressful. How do we manage that? Well, the work of John Kabat-Zinn and Joan Borysenko are the two that I have found to be most helpful over the 30 years or so, I guess, that I've wanted and needed to practice that. And Kabat-Zinn talks about reacting or responding. So when our brains are always canvassing our environment, including right now, and I'll use myself as an example. My brain is canvassing. Am I safe here? Well, obviously, I'm in my home. I'm not in any physical danger. But if something happened that seemed very unusual during this presentation, my brain might decide, well, maybe you're not because I'm in physical danger, but maybe I would be embarrassed, or maybe something would go wrong. So that's the old flight or fight. the reptilian brain, our first priority is to survive, and our bodies are always canvassing. So if my body decides I might not be safe, i.e., I might be embarrassed, let's say, then it in a reacting mode, message goes danger, perception, and the brain begins to release the stress hormones. The ones that we're most familiar with are adrenaline, epinephrine, and norepinephrine, also cortisol, though cortisol is more associated with chronic stress versus an acute situation. So what does that mean? Well, I think most of us have watched enough medical shows, if you haven't worked in healthcare, to know that adrenaline, epinephrine, those are drugs that are like emergency drugs. You give those drugs maybe to start the heart. And what do? They're very powerful chemicals, and they cause constriction of the blood vessels. Well, that raises our blood pressure, raises our heart rate, raises our respiratory rate, because if I actually need to flee, I need a lot of those chemicals on board in order to get myself moving to escape whatever the physical danger is. But when it happens because of perceived danger, nothing has happened, then it becomes overkill, and I can develop either have an acute episode of a hypertensive crisis. I've known of people in my nursing practice that had heart attacks over this huge adrenaline surge. So can we teach our minds to learn to respond rather than reacting? And the answer to that is yes. We have a lot more control than we typically exercise. And mindfulness is a wonderful tool for that. So if I can learn my signs of stress, maybe my shoulder aches, maybe my voice maybe my speech is faster, maybe it intensifies and is more pressured. All of those could be signs of stress. And before I launch, and by launching, I mean I yell at somebody or slam down the phone or do something I later wish to apologize for. If I can learn to catch those signs early, then I can choose to respond. And when I respond, instead of accelerating the sympathetic nervous system, which is adrenaline and norepinephrine, those chemicals, I can stop myself and say, whoa, nothing's happened here. Take a deep breath. Let's think what we could do to respond to the situation. And respond is the key word. And when I do that, my parasympathetic nervous system, which is the more relaxed, calming side, can reduce my blood pressure, reduce my heart rate. If I've hyperventilated, I start to calm down, and I make better decisions. Because when I'm reacting, I am in knee-jerk launch mode. When I'm responding, I'm being deliberate and making conscious decisions, which over the course of my life will serve me well, as it will for all of us humans. So react or respond. And Kabat-Zinn, in his book called Full Catastrophe Living, which is in your resource list, is a text really on mindfulness. So I find it to be very helpful, and he does a great job of explaining the difference and what reacting versus responding, what reacting can do to us on a more chronic long-term basis. Managing stress is the foundation for our health, and so many other things, including the three other elements here, flow to and from that. The final piece I would say about stress management is I just encourage everyone to consider a meditation practice that works for you. There are many different forms of meditation. There are resources in your resource list to help you with that. I practice mindfulness, and I have frequently taught in classes like this breathing exercises to follow the breath. The last discussion I did for Eisenhower, and we talked about meditation, and I had found a new idea that I've actually been using myself over the last couple of months, and I like it better. And it is to not even consider that you're meditating, but listen for a sound. I live in rural Mississippi on the Gulf Coast, and I have all around me a lot of trees and space and beautiful birds singing every morning and every evening. And this particular form says to choose a sound. That's what I chose. The teacher used Tibetan bowls, gorgeous sounds. Find something for you. It could also be the sound of a fan or the air conditioner, but a sound you focus on and you listen for the sound. And what happens then is, as I'm listening for the sound, the internal chatter that runs in at least my head a lot of the time, is diverted to the focus of whatever sound it is I've chosen to listen. So I invite you to try that. Particularly if you've not meditated before, because it takes a lot of the pressure off. You're not trying to make yourself meditate. You're sitting quietly and listening for a sound. And I would encourage you, when you start for a couple of minutes. John Borysenko's book, Mending the Mind, Minding the Body, is the book I used 30 years ago to try to learn to meditate, because I was a jumping jack. I couldn't sit still and I couldn't shut my mind off. And it was 2 minutes. And then I could just be relieved that I did it. And that was all that was required, that I do it. It wasn't about doing it right. It was simply about doing it. It took me months to get to 20 minutes. But doing it over those months changed my life. And it is my belief that for anyone who practices on a regular basis and simply puts the effort in, it will change your life. And it will really help with managing stress to stay calmer, because I don't get into that reactionary mode nearly as much anymore as I used to decades ago. I lived that way. So I commend that to you. And with that, let's move on and talk about some of the other pieces to the other components. And exercise is certainly one. The takeaway to me for exercise: find an activity you enjoy. And it's really important that you enjoy it. If you don't like to swim, but your husband or wife or partner does, then okay, that's great. But you're probably not going to continue it if you don't like to do it. So find something you like to do, and then set a goal to do it. And better to set a goal that is an underachieved goal than to set a goal that is so high that you won't reach it initially, and you are disappointed and frustrated and stop. The recommendation is 150 minutes a week of moderate to strenuous exercise. That sounds like a lot, but actually, if you did it every day, it's about 20 minutes. If you don't have any regular form of exercise today, don't start there. Start with maybe, I'm mostly in the house. I think I will walk for 5 minutes in the house, and I'm going to do it 4 times a week. Okay, do that for a couple of weeks and then increase it, because the goal is to get where you're going. It's not to do, be the weekend warrior for a week, and then you're either exhausted, you ache, you hurt, and you're discouraged. So find something you like, and it can be any number of things. If you want to do some aerobic exercise, then try walking. That's tough to do in the desert in the summer, but maybe you do swim, or maybe you just do pool exercises. Maybe you walk in your house and you get your heart rate up. It's real important for me, as a postmenopausal woman, that I keep my bones strong. And so I do Pilates a couple of times a week. And that's been very helpful for me with that. And I mow my yard to get my cardio if I'm not walking along the beach. So, and yoga. Yoga is fabulous. Yoga is good for balance. It's good for lots of things. Find what you like. Tai Chi, any number of activities, but please find something that you'll enjoy. It is also, exercise is part of a treatment plan for depression and anxiety. And I know that from personal experience. Meds are great. If you don't want to take meds, or you can't, or they're not working, you need to move. Moving helps the brain it transforms brain chemistry. So it can help with dopamine and serotonin secretion. And those things are those are the neurotransmitters that are often associated with depression and anxiety. And with anxiety, when you get that rev going in the middle and it's like you feel tight, that's adrenaline, because what? There's perception, there's change, something stressful is coming. When you move, though, it allows you to move that revved energy from inside you to the outside, where it can go away or at least be reduced. Exercise helps prevent conditions of chronic illness, cardiovascular disease, cerebrovascular disease, stroke, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and it can also reduce premature mortality, because often then you're not getting these chronic conditions. It will improve the quality of your life. And I think for all of us, yes, we want quantity, but more than quantity, we want quality. And moving will help that. You will feel better. You will sleep better. You will make different choices in terms of your diet, and it will help you manage your stress. It's also been found to be helpful in the treatment of some substance use disorders because it reduces cravings. So anything from alcohol to nicotine to any other substance. For many, exercise helps to reduce cravings. We talked about the recommendation, and don't start there. If you don't exercise now, start slow, but build and set goals for yourself and try to stick to those. If you fall off for a week because people were in town, or the weather was awful, or whatever it was, just get back on. Don't allow that to be the reason that you stop. And as I said, it will enhance your sleep quality and also support healthy nutrition. More benefits, physical activity, including yoga. You have this in your resources. This was a study on the NIH site that was an overall study related to benefits of exercise. This was actually done in China, but what they found, and yoga is very, not in China, in India. Yoga is much a part of life there. So they included yoga because it is exercise. They found that it improved brain function, particularly at the axis of the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal glands. What are the adrenal glands? They're the stress glands. That's where our stress hormones come from. And it reduced cortisol. Again, cortisol more associated with chronic. So overall, benefits of exercise help to reduce an elevated cortisol, particularly for those that are either living with a chronic medical condition, or today, so many are caregiving, and that's stressful. And so that as a chronic, it's really not a medical condition, but chronic situation, also can lead to elevated cortisol levels, and it helps to reduce that. So what about nutrition? Well, the takeaway from nutrition is to eat as close to the earth as possible. Well, what in the world do I mean about that? Do I have to get a garden? No, you don't. But eat real food, less processed, if processed at all. And when possible, that is fresh and local. That's the key. There is increasing evidence to support the benefits of a plant-based diet. And that doesn't mean that you have to become a vegetarian, but making as many plant-based choices and allowing plant-based foods to be the primary components on your dinner plate is preferable to the old plan where half of your plate was your meat, and then you had a couple of maybe colorful vegetables or a starch to go with it. That's pretty much been reversed in terms of the current evidence for over the last few decades. The types of diets, you don't necessarily, unless one is prescribed, have to follow a diet or the diet. If you will eat as close to the earth as possible, you'll probably be okay. But there are some examples that have evidence to support their benefit, and I've listed some of those here. So the Mediterranean diet, I think we'll talk about them a little bit more in detail. The DASH diet, the DASH Med diet was just a combination. They've all found to have a positive effect on hypertension, hyperlipidemia, high cholesterol, obesity and overweight, and inflammation. And, we all hear often in the, whether it's in the literature or on the news, about inflammation, because it leads to an increased risk for conditions that are associated with morbidity and mortality: cardiovascular disease, cerebrovascular disease, diabetes, and cancer. So whatever we can do to reduce inflammation, and nutrition has a lot to do with that, is of benefit to our overall health. The World Health Organization recommends a diet that is found in the elements of the diet found in Mediterranean and DASH diets. And those have reduced saturated and trans fats and an increased amount of unsaturated fats, fruits, veggies with limited salt and sugar. Macronutrients, when you hear people talk about macronutrients and macronutrients are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Micronutrients are vitamins and minerals. So let's go into each of those a little bit more. So carbohydrates, they are our body's primary energy source. Examples are grains. I see I've got grains down twice there. Grains, preferably whole grains, fruits and veggies, legumes, nuts, and seeds. Benefits of the carbohydrates in our diet are the reduction of cardiovascular disease, stroke, and cancer. And they also reduce mortality from any cause. So including these foods, which are not processed or fried in your diet, are of great benefit. They've even found that your fruit veggie intake is inversely related to the risk of non-communicable diseases like heart disease, cerebrovascular disease, COPD, which is emphysema, chronic lung disease, lung cancer, and metabolic syndrome. So carbohydrates are really important for energy, and eating sources that are fresh, not processed, are better for you. Proteins. Proteins are required, and we often hear, I think, particularly as we get older, that we need to eat lots of protein because protein is required for lean body mass. It helps to prevent age-related loss of muscle mass, which indirectly then can prevent fractures, which for seniors can be catastrophic. So proteins also carry the amino acids that the body needs in order to properly function. Proteins are found in both plant and animal sources. Some folks think, well, they talk about a plant-based diet, but I won't get enough protein. I have to have animals in order to have enough protein. And you have to be smart about your choices, but there's plenty of protein in plants. I mean, look at the smoothies and all the protein powders now that are made with pea. It's pea protein. So it's not required. Just have to make informed choices. Animal proteins have the saturated fats that are linked to cardiovascular disease, hyperlipidemia, high cholesterol, some cancers, and they also increase the acidity in the body. And that increased acidity is associated with insulin resistance, glucose instability, and the development of urinary calcium stones. So, not to say don't have any animal protein if you really want it, but encourage you to limit it, and when possible, get it from local farms. I know in the desert we have Sage Mountain Farm is a great community supported agriculture. I used to get great vegetable, boxes delivered to a local health food store, and to help me get my fresh vegetables. And they also had meats. And if I was choosing to eat some meat, I used their sources because they were on farms like my grandparents had. They ate the pasture grasses, the pasture greens. They were healthier animals. And when they were slaughtered, it was done in a humane way. They were healthier animals. So obviously then their meat would be healthier. Fats. I used to work in a cardiology practice 30 years ago where I managed a lipid clinic. So for folks with high cholesterols. And it was during the time of everything needed to be low fat, low fat, low fat, low fat. And you may remember a brand, Snackwells. I don't think they exist anymore, but the food was delicious and it didn't have any fat in it. Well, it didn't have any fat in it, it had lots of sugar. We need fat. It is the primary element of our cell membrane structure and a source of energy for our cells and for our bodily functions. So we need some fats. It is not a healthy diet unless your physician has told you to have no fats for some reason, to not have any fat. You may need to limit your fats, particularly if you have cardiovascular disease, cerebrovascular disease, or diabetes, but then make better choices about what those fats are. And in particular, choose the unsaturated fats. Types of fats: monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, saturated, and trans fats. And trans fats essentially are a newer thing. They're made from the processing of vegetable oils and those are, they go through, what's my word? I've lost my word. A hydrogenated process, and they become a different kind of fat that has been named of trans fat. So unsaturated fats are associated with reducing cardiovascular disease and decreased mortality. Examples are plant-based oils, nuts and seeds, and fish. Omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, which are polyunsaturated fats, are required for normal growth and are important for the body, but we don't make those. So we have to get them from other sources. And yes, you can get them from supplements, and sometimes that's a good idea. But when possible, get them from a real source other than a capsule or a powder. Omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, are protective for the heart. There's also increasing evidence to support that they can help to prevent our cognitive decline. They reduce inflammation. They help to sustain muscle mass and improve insulin resistance. Best sources are from seeds and plant oils, and then if you need them, from supplements, and also from seafood. So again, this is where fish can come into play. You need to be aware of the mercury content in fish, but fish, salmon is particularly good, are good sources. And even there, when possible, you would want to have wild caught versus farmed. And then our micronutrients are our vitamins and minerals, and they're needed for the body to work properly. They're needed for cell membranes and for our body's metabolism. They are carried throughout the body by the water that is in our body, because we are primarily water. So it's real important to drink enough water, and particularly in the desert as we move into the summer season. And in talking to friends and watching the weather, I know you all have had some hot days already. So what are some of the healthy diets? Let's just take a few minutes to go over the ones that I had mentioned earlier. They are considered healthy because they benefit the cardio-cerebrovascular systems, so our hearts and our lungs and our blood vessels. Our glycemic control, so our glucoses, and they also are showing increasingly, we're doing studies and finding that they're also very beneficial for our brains. Fresh fruits and vegetables, poultry, fish, nuts, legumes, plant-based oils. The DASH diet, which was done to dietary approach to stop hypertension, in addition to that, really encourages you to limit your total fat intake as well as the saturated fat intake and cholesterol. And for many people on the DASH diet, their physician will encourage them to limit their salt and will give them a specific number of milligrams of salt to work toward as a goal on a daily basis. The MIND diet was, this was new to me when I started looking for our time together. And the MIND diet stands for Mediterranean Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. So it's looking at those two diets as a means of preventing cognitive decline as we age. And the focus there is to increase your fresh fruits and veggies. Consistent theme here, especially green leafy vegetables, nuts, berries, beans, whole grains, poultry, olive oil, and yes, wine in moderation. You are encouraged for the cognitive piece to limit your red meat, your cheese, your pastries, sweets, processed, fried fast foods. Another one I was not familiar with, but was the Nordic diet, and there the focus is similar, but they or the components are similar, but they really focus on regional and local food sources in the Nordic countries. So they're looking at evidence there and doing studies, and there are more studies needed, though some have been done in Asia looking at the Chinese, Japanese, and Korean diets. And there's variations in those, but many of them are also, well, most of them are following eating less processed food. The Western diet is the one that really has the most processed food and fried fast food. So limiting that. let's go back to this a minute. So just to kind of recap a lot of this, again, I'm not a dietitian, I'm a nurse. But the content here, I think, is pretty clear, and the evidence is quite strong. Eat as close to the earth as possible. Limit processed food, fast food, fried food, red meats, and increase your servings of fresh fruits and veggies. And when you're eating poultry or fish, try to do so from locally sourced if possible. If possible, community farm or wild caught if it's fish. And whole grains. So the final component of our cornerstone is sleep. And sleep, we're just learning in the last decade or so how really important it is. And I can remember as a young nurse, it was the theme was along the lines of, well, as you get older, you just don't need as much sleep. So just don't worry about it. And I can remember older people, seniors, I was young then, not a senior, being told that. That's not true. And the evidence now shows us that that is not true. We need good quality sleep for healthy brain function and to maintain our physical health and well-being. The evidence supports 7 to 8 hours a night across the lifespan of uninterrupted sleep on a regular basis. Now, if you're not there now, all is not lost. That's a goal. And you may be a person for whom that you really don't need that, but most people do. It's just that because I'm a senior. As seniors, we tend to awaken more easily, maybe have a harder time falling asleep, and having interrupted sleep. Often it's to get up to visit the loo. So strive for longer uninterrupted sleep. It's not the quantity, though, it's also the quality. Well, what is that? That means you want to have deep stage sleep every night when possible. The deepest stage of sleep is what we typically have the least of. I know my good old Apple Watch monitors my sleep for me at night. And you want to have deep sleep. You want to have rapid eye movement sleep. Usually 3 to 4 hours of that would be ideal. And then your core sleep is that lighter stage of sleep. Set the stage for success for quality sleep. So for an hour before you go to bed, start to wind down. That means no war movies, no political television, nothing. Don't talk to the family member that's aggravating you. I don't mean necessarily your spouse or your partner, but okay, Uncle Joe, who aggravates you. Don't talk to him if you're going to plan to go to bed within an hour. Set the stage. There are wonderful apps, and some are in your resources that can help you if you're having difficulty getting to sleep. And then if it persists, talk to your healthcare provider, not necessarily to get a sleeping pill, but to see if together you can figure out some tips and tools to help you, because restful sleep is really important as a cornerstone to health. So what are some more tips? Create a sleep schedule. Try to go to bed at about the same time every night and stick to it. Exercise, as we've discussed, but not too late in the day, because that sometimes keeps you're still, your metabolism's up, your heart rate's up. It could be harder to go to sleep. Avoid caffeine and nicotine later in the day. Now that will vary for each individual. It can take 8 hours for the effects of it to wear off. But everybody's different. My mother, who's 93, if she wakes up in the middle of the night, she wants a cup of coffee. I can't have coffee afternoon because I won't go to sleep. So everybody's different. Avoid alcohol shortly before you go to bed. It may make you sleepy, but you probably won't stay asleep, and you'll stay in a lighter sleep stage, so you won't get that deep quality sleep. If you're a napper, that's a good thing. Naps are great. Don't nap though after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and at any time, don't nap for less than an hour. This is generally speaking, but if you're having trouble sleeping, think about that. Relax before you go to bed. Do things that give your body the message, I'm preparing for a restful night's sleep. And even say that. Before I go to bed at night, I say my prayers. And one of the things I say is, I am thankful for the good night's sleep that I am about to have. I'm a big believer in gratitude and identifying gratitudes on a daily basis. I do those before I go to sleep. They just remind me, it puts me in a positive state of mind and helps my body, the parasympathetic nervous system, to come forward. So my heart rate goes down, my respiratory rate goes down, and my blood pressure goes down, and I can relax. Herbal teas are great. A warm bath. Music can be very powerful. And there are even apps, or on YouTube, there are video or musics for that are specifically for sleep to help when you're having trouble. Calm is a great app. Bedtime stories, I love to hear the Velveteen Rabbit before I go to sleep. So find things that work for you. Try things out. If that doesn't work, try something else. If you go to bed and you don't go to sleep and you're tossing and turning, after about 20, 30 minutes, get up. Otherwise, we train our bodies to be restless in bed, and that isn't what our goal is. So get up, read, have a glass of tea, a cup of tea, herbal tea. If something's on your mind that's troubling you, write about it, write it down so you know you won't forget it for in the morning. Meditate, pray, then go back to bed and try again. So I hope some of those may be helpful for you. Sleep is just really critical in terms of optimizing our health. So I found this chart, again, on the NIH website. I thought it was a really great visual. So these are the things in green that you want to include daily: physical activity, adequate rest, lots of water, probably in the desert coming up you may need 2 to 4 liters a day if you're outside, because much of America is chronically dehydrated. And one of the signs of that is fatigue and brain fog. Daily fruits, vegetables, whole grains, olives, olive oils, legumes, nuts, and seeds. Also optional on a daily basis, low fat, reduced fat dairy, fish and seafood. Weekly, lean meats, grains, potatoes, other than sweet potatoes, they're not the best option. There's nothing wrong with potatoes. Poultry and eggs, and then on a less frequent basis, sweets, and include weekly alcohol if you wish, in moderation. Now, what I didn't mention, didn't spend any time really at all on this evening, but is so important, is our social interaction. And the evidence is so strong that we need to have that. We are social beings. So we're going to go over some resources, and I'll pull out a couple in that resource list that if that's something that you'd like to work on, that might give you some ideas. And I don't mean social media. I'm talking about social interaction, talking to others, walking your dog. So here are some of our resources as we're coming to a close for our time together. These are all resources that I have found over the years to be very helpful in terms of managing stress, and they are from which the content for that component today was pulled. Dean Ornish's book, Love and Survival, The Basis for the Healing Power of Intimacy, is also about the importance of our social connection. It's not a new book, but it has really important information. And of course, he writes about heart health. The other I would commend in that respect is Sood's book on the Mayo Clinic's Handbook for Happiness. That also includes, it's just a fun read, and it includes some general things related to being happy, which also causes us to lead healthier lives. Pritikin is down at the bottom. Eisenhower's cardiac rehab program is a comprehensive one and follows a plant-based diet based on the Pritikin program. You go to their website, either at Eisenhower or on Pritikin, and they have a plant-based diet, as well as the importance of social support and spiritual connection, whatever that means to you. For this particular discussion this evening, these are resources that I pulled, most of which were from the NIH, related to exercise, nutrition, and sleep, if you wanted to read more about that. The NIH is terrific for scholarly articles. Gratitude, we didn't talk specifically about. It's a topic near and dear to my heart, and one that I've been fortunate to be able to share on other occasions. And these are all resources about that are not only good for information on the benefits of gratitude, but they also are science-based. So, and then these are just some general additional resources. Some of them are duplicated. I love Mary Oliver's work, and in particular, Wild Geese is one of my favorites, but that's very soothing, and poetry can be very helpful in terms of managing stress. Some books that I find to be real helpful, particularly Kabat-Zinn, Joan Borisenko. I just commend their work to each of you. These are not new books, but I think they're classics in terms of stress management, mindfulness, and optimal health. There also, there's some journal articles. Then the websites, even Netflix has Headspace, which is about meditation. But if you are a Mac person, Relaxed Melodies is an app that's just there, and they have great music. You can create your own music from there for either meditation. It also can be helpful for sleep at night. And that is where we are. So let me open it up and see, do you have any questions? Anything you'd like to share? Because this is a lot of topic in a very short period of time. And I appreciate, and I also want to say happy Pride Month. And I hope that the rest of the month brings good things. And I appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Karen. Great presentation, as always. And so feel free to unmute and ask any questions of Karen if you'd like. I know Barbara Napa is on, but I don't believe Barbara, but it could be. I know there was someone else there. Mm-hmm. But feel free to unmute if you would like to ask a question.
Or share anything. If there's something that works for you about this, please. We can learn from one another.
Well, I think the key was you mentioned is the Calm app. I know I have it. Mm-hmm. Do I use it all the time? Do I actually access it? Do I get caught up into that, a few minutes before bed? Oh, I should check an email. I should check something else. That's just not helpful. And I actually turn on music on Pandora in another language from an artist, specifically in Latin, which I don't understand the words, but I understand, but the melody and it's just nice and calming, even though I don't understand at all what's being spoken.
A universal language.
Yeah, and it just kind of helps me calm down, but it also gives me some melodic kind of stuff to be thinking about when I dream, which is kind of nice.
Sounds nice.
All right. Well, I don't see anything in the chat and or nobody unmuting. So
Okay.
at this point, we will say, Karen, thank you very much. And really appreciate. And then this recording will be available the next couple of weeks. We'll send it out to anyone who registered, and then have it also on our Eisenhower Health webpage as well. But Karen, with that in mind, it's still sunny out back, so looking out through your window. So go and enjoy. I know it's humid, but go and enjoy the fabulous weather it looks like.
Thank you. You all take care. And again, thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with you. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
And I also just want to say thank you, Karen. Thank you, Brett, as always. Thank you for everyone that has attended, and really appreciate this collaboration. And Karen, especially for you being able to be here for us.
Thanks so much, Becky. Take care.
Of course.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.